Welcome back to MASHmouth, a podcast covering every single episode of the hit 1970s sitcom MASH. I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Ethan.
Ethan, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I'm pretty good. I'm happy to be back. I hope that whoever's listening is happy to have us back as well.
Yeah, I was so sad when we had to take a hiatus because life, but I'm really excited to be back. I thought that we would open this episode just by talking about our little New Year's Eve tradition that we do every year, because I think it's a lot of fun. So do you want to explain what we do?
Yes, we do a little gift exchange, and it's a good time. We don't get anything like crazy for each other, but we try to get things that are like very specific and very like interesting for each other. This year was super fun. You got me this like awesome Kevin Smith visual dictionary, like history of all this stuff. And I know some people don't like Kevin Smith, but as a New Jersey trash bag who likes movies, I'm like contractually mandated to at least appreciate Kevin Smith on a spiritual level. So it's a super cool gift to have, and thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. I always say Ethan is really easy to buy for because I just like can look at something and know that he's going to enjoy it. So Ethan actually got me a MASH related gift this year, and it was really sweet. It's the final days of filming on MASH that Alan Alda's wife actually took a bunch of pictures, I'm pretty sure. And there was just some commentary, and it was really cute. And also this history of the musical, The Great Comet. And it's so fun. I love musical books like that. So thank you, Ethan. I'm so happy that we're back recording and that we had our fun little New Year's tradition.
Yes, thank you as well. Love, just love it. It's super fun. I'm glad that you like your stuff. And I hope that you... when we get further into the show, can use that MASH book as like some reference material. Like this is how
yes,
they did it.
Yes, definitely. All right, so do you want to get into the episode a little bit?
I would like to get into the episode. This one is insane. But let's first give a little bit of like a summary and everything that we're gonna do. So, do you want to tell us what happened in this one?
Yes. So in this episode called Germ Warfare, Hawkeye treats a wounded North Korean soldier in his tent due to limited bed space in the OR. When the soldier needs a blood transfusion, Hawk and Trap decide to use Frank as an unwilling donor. But of course, there are complications that arise from their little shenanigans. So, Ethan, what did you think about this episode? I know you have thoughts.
Okay. So, first of all, I do want to say that I thought this episode was good. It was very dense with jokes. Like I started writing down lines that I thought were good, but like literally 2 minutes in the episode, it was like there's too many lines to write down. Like I had to like not do that because it was just so fast and so quick. But also, oh my god, this episode is like insane. Like they steal Frank's blood, and I know that we don't like Frank Burns on this show, but like that's an insane thing to do. This is the first time that I was like, no, they should be arrested for this. They should be in jail. They stole a piece of his body without his knowing consent. It was like, this is like this is a crazy thing for these heroes to do. What did you think of this one?
Well, I remember on the stealing Frank's blood part, which we'll get into in a minute, but on stealing Frank's blood, I remember watching it as a kid and being like, all right, so what? They took Frank's blood, not really understanding the implications of like stealing someone's blood against their will is just not okay at all.
That would happen in like a thriller, like a Silence of the Lambs thriller. It'd be like, and I stole your blood while you were sleeping.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I didn't understand, like at the end too, when I was younger, when I was watching it at the end, what they were so angry. They're like, what? You stole blood? I was like, who cares? But yeah, it was honestly really crazy. But I really liked this episode as well. I also noticed like so many good one-liners in this one. Just great. Lovely, lovely episode besides, the stealing of the blood.
And it would be like different if it was like later on in the episode for various reasons that we'll get into. They have to basically also steal Frank's urine. And the way they do that is like...
I don't know if it was urine.
Oh, well... Well, they make him drink a bunch of beer, so I thought it was like, oh, I have to pee now.
This is evidence that Ethan doesn't drink, because you don't know what happens to you when, like, alcohol runs through your body.
Sure. Well, either way, how they acquire the specimen that they need later on is a little more like not non-knowing consent. Like, they still take it without him knowing, but it wasn't like they force anything.
Yeah.
If it was like they tricked him into donating blood and then like gave it to the North Korean without his express permission to give it to the North Korean, like, that would be different. But the fact that they literally just, in his sleep, drain him of his blood, and they're like, all right, this is a fun thing to do, it's insane.
Yeah, it was a little bit crazy. So why don't we get into why they have to take Frank's blood?
Yes, we're a little all over the place for this one, but it's fine.
Yeah, we jumped it a little bit. So to get into the reason why they steal Frank's blood, Hawkeye is treating this North Korean patient, and something along the lines of he just needs like plasma or blood or something, and then he'll be fine. But of course, Frank is like, no, he's a North Korean soldier. We're not going to let that happen. And it's just so annoying and so Frank. That was my first reaction. I was like, wow, there's Frank again.
Yes. One thing that I like about this storyline is that, first of all, they clarify that he only needs 24 hours of bed rest to be, like, good. It wasn't even a huge ask. And of course, if you work in the hospital, like, bed space is precious, so I did understand that, like, when Henry was brought in, he was just like, no, we need bed space for our guys. It's like, it is understandable, but I do like how in this show, based on what I've seen, that North Koreans are never portrayed as like the villain, like not any more than they would be in a war situation. Whenever they're brought into like their unit, they're always just people, or Hawkeye wants to treat them as just another wounded person there that they would have to treat. Because he's a doctor, and he's a good doctor, and he's empathy. It's like, it is nice. That is a very consistent thing with the show that I've seen.
Yeah, I actually noted down, like, of course, Hawkeye is like, no, I don't care if he's a North Korean or just anyone. He needs his bed rest, and I want to make sure he's stable and lives before he's transferred. And then, of course, like I said, Frank is very much like, no, he has to be transferred. He's a POW.
Yeah, so, he wants to send it to prisoner of war, which I just think is, like, kind of extreme. He was just wounded. I don't really understand, like, circumstances of, like, wartime and being in the military, I'll admit.
Yeah.
But, like, sending this guy to prisoner of war for being wounded sounded insane.
He would be, because he's North Korean, or, like, in the narrative of the story, because he's a North Korean person, he is automatically, like, a prisoner of war. They would send him to, like, a POW camp and whatnot, and he would be held, usually, hopefully, in, like, negotiation for American POWs, and it would be, like, an exchange of prisoners of war, using human beings as leverage against another country. Kind of gross, but, that's how it works, and yuck. But...
Okay. I'm very unfamiliar with the circumstances of how this situation would work, so thank you for clarifying that a bit. Because just hearing that, kind of knowing the basics of what a prisoner of war is, Frank just being like, oh, just send him there, like, very callously. I was like, that seems extreme, but I guess if that's, like, routine, it's not fine, but it's fine.
Yeah, it was, like, protocol. But before that, again, unfortunately, that has to happen. That's just, like, army regulation. Hawkeye, again, wants to make sure he's stable, so he goes to Henry and says, Henry, let's make sure this guy is stable. He's a patient. I don't care if he's North Korean. And what I really liked about this exchange, when Hawkeye and Trapper are trying to get Henry to agree to let Hawkeye take care of this patient until he's stable to be moved, is that when Hawkeye and Trapper say to Henry, "You're being regular army," he like relents immediately. He's like, yeah, you're right. I guess I am being regular army. Okay, you can do what you want. And I feel like that comes back to Henry just kind of knowing how all this works. Like, he knows that it's not the right thing to do to move an unstable patient. So he's like, all right, I don't want to be regular army, so go ahead and do what you want.
Yeah, because again, I do understand, like, the actual issue at hand, that they just don't have the space for it. And, you know, if an American soldier got hurt and, like, they didn't have the room for it because of this North Korean guy, like, that does look bad. So I understand it, and I liked that Henry did relent to, like, consenting to have this guy be treated in Hawkeye's tent, because it's just his space, you know? It's not hospital space, so, like, yes, this was, like, a clever, like, execution of the situation, and then it went insane from there.
I really liked also the prisoner of war, his name is Pi. So you get this scene where Hawkeye and Trapper move Pi into the swamp, and it's kind of a voiceover where Henry says, "I don't want any more like blowback from Frank Burns about this guy." So what do Hawkeye and Trapper do? They move the guy into the swamp, like, to share quarters with Frank. And Frank just freaks out. He's like, what the heck? I ordered this guy transferred.
I gotta give Frank some credit, because as soon as they were like, this is our space, you can't do anything about it, he's just like, oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, he's not happy about it, but he's like, okay, whatever.
He doesn't scheme, which I thought was, like, good.
Yeah.
So, as we talked about, they determine that this prisoner of war, he needs a blood transfusion, and the hospital is, like, low on AB negative, which is, like, a very special, specific blood type to have.
Yeah, it's the rarest type of blood, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and they determine that Frank has AB negative, so while he's sleeping, they stick a needle in him. Somehow he doesn't wake up from that. That would jolt me awake like there's no tomorrow. He's just a tank, I guess.
I noted that too. I was like, there is literally no way that this man would sleep through being stuck with a needle. There's no way.
And then they drain him of a pint of blood, and they whisper sweet nothings into his ear while he's sleeping. And that's, you know, that happens, and it's played for laughs, and it is, like, I know this is a comedy show, and I know it's, like, a funny gag to do, especially, it's just like, look how absurd this is, but man, oh man, what a wild thing to do.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Again, we're not condoning that. Like, don't steal blood. But
don't steal blood.
But yeah, no, it was kind of wild. That they were like, okay, got a pint, we're good now. I did think it was funny, though, that they were kind of, like, playing with Frank while he was asleep, like, trying to elicit dreams of Margaret. I thought funny. that was funny, and that, to me, kind of saved the darkness of them stealing his blood.
Yeah, it was like, they probably could have got the blood from somewhere else, or got it under different circumstances, but they wanted to be jerks and be like, hey, got your blood, Frank, what's up?
I know, oh my gosh. So then, of course, that leads into the main, like, conflict of the episode, where Pi, he's starting to get sick, and he's experiencing symptoms of hepatitis after they give him Frank's blood in this transfusion. And they even note in the show, too, that it's a long shot that Frank's blood gave him hepatitis. But also, I feel like they were really relying on the audience not knowing how medical stuff works, because, like, I don't feel like this would be as big of a concern, because, I don't know, it's just, like, kind of impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert, but they do clarify, like, no, it would take a while for hepatitis to be transferred to someone like that through blood.
Yeah.
It wouldn't just show up immediately. And they acknowledge that in the episode, but they're also like, well, it could be a new variant, so let's just, and I think it's part of their I want to mess with Frank kind of thing. Like, it's fun to them to fool around and see if he has hepatitis and if they can get rid of him, because they're not really concerned for his health. They're mainly like, oh man, if he has hepatitis, he'll have to leave.
Yeah, I actually noted that down. I thought that was pretty funny that there's up until this point you see kind of like a role reversal where Margaret and Frank are usually the ones who are trying to like scheme to get Hawkeye and Trapper thrown out of the camp. We've seen that like 3 times up until this 10 point.
Episode run.
Yeah. Now it's roles reverse where it's Hawkeye and Trapper being like, oh wow, if Frank has hepatitis, then he can be thrown out of the camp, basically. But I did notice that, they do seem like genuinely concerned, like, we really should know if he has hepatitis or not. Like this is an important thing to know.
But they definitely do have an underlying motivation that maybe is driving them to go to a bit of extremes to determine this.
Yeah, like they don't let him operate eventually, but also they do kind of go to lengths to try to keep him away from Margaret just in case, they have sex and then he does have hepatitis, he could potentially give it to her. So they do care, but they care in their own special way.
The Margaret thing in this episode I thought was also insane. Like, I know that they've had this relationship, and I know that that's been very, like, open on the show that, like, they are in a relationship with each other. But in this one, it wasn't any more explicit than, like, anything that could be on a 70s TV show. But they were, like, just very... They were talking a lot about, like, oh, I want to touch you and everything. It was like, this is very explicit for what they normally do.
Yeah, it was very much like, it was as dirty talk could get, I feel. That was still, TV appropriate.
In the G-rated TV, or PG 70s, it was just like, whoa, they are talking explicitly about, like,
Yes, having sex. You could say it. I did think it was funny that when Hawkeye and Trapper are trying to keep Margaret and Frank apart, they kind of realize it, They know what they're doing and they think they're up to their normal just tricks and playing jokes on them and stuff. And then Margaret says something like along the lines of, oh, they're just jealous of the purity and spirituality of our relationship. Yes. Meanwhile, she and Frank are carrying on an affair while Frank is married. It's just like, yeah, so pure.
Man, Margaret deserves so much better. I just have to say that
yes.
I don't understand, not giving any shame to Larry Linville or anything, but like the character of Frank Burns, like, what is appealing about this man to her? I don't know. I know. Understand.
She's just so much better than him. We stan Margaret Houlihan, but it's fine. She does get better eventually. She does do better. But I just thought that line was really funny. It's just like, wow, stop. Oh, and also like the fact that the way Hawkeye and Trapper are trying to keep them apart is so classically sitcom to me, where it's just like, it's so simple, but it's effective to be like stupid and funny. I don't know. I really liked that.
Yeah, all they do is say like, hey, Henry needs Frank and Dish needs Margaret. And they just go that way, and they're like, oh, okay, I guess we can't hang out right now. And then they show up, and they're like, oh, I didn't need you. And they're all like, oh. Okay, like, there was barely any conflict there. Just like, oh, well, I guess you don't need me. See ya.
Yeah, it was funny. I think we both noted down, too, that the ending was, like, really quick. So right after Hawkeye and Trapper kind of make it so that Frank and Margaret can't, be together, they have to go. And
after they get more samples of, I guess, his DNA or whatever.
Oh, yeah, we forgot to talk about the samples. So as we said, Frank possibly has hepatitis, but they need another sample from him to test to make sure, and they don't have enough of his blood left that they had stolen. So they have to like trick him into giving them a sample of some other bodily fluid so that they can test it. So I thought it was really funny that they tried to trick him into giving the sample by like goading him into camaraderie. Like Hawkeye, Trapper, and Jones set up this whole thing where they're trying to get Frank to test beer to see if like one's stronger and one's flat and et cetera, et cetera. And he won't do it originally. And they say to him, what did they say? We
were really hoping you could be one of the guys or something along those lines.
Yeah, and like, oh, I thought he would be a normal guy. I thought that was kind of sad. Yeah, I thought it was kind of sad that he was like, you know, oh, I want to be one of the guys.
Because everybody wants to be like, even though they don't like each other, I'm sure that Frank would be much happier if he was like, man, I don't quite see eye to eye with Hawkeye and Trapper, but like, man, they are my friends. We do hang out. Like, that was a real sympathy moment for him. I was like, oh, I feel that.
I know, like, I don't, like, I think I've mentioned before in past episodes, I don't feel bad for Frank Burns that often. But sometimes, like, his humanity shows.
Sometimes when you steal his blood, you know, you really feel for him.
But yeah, so they eventually do get a sample from him by forcing him to drink beer and having to use the bathroom, which gross, like, they do it they force, kind of, like, make him go to the bathroom in a bucket, and oh god, that's just so gross to me. The thought of that is just nasty. But eventually,
sorry to be like carry on this, but after he goes to the bathroom, whatever he was doing, he comes out of the little tent that they set up and just has this like, all right, I did it. I'm feeling good. Like this little stride to him. It was like, this is a very odd way to exit the bathroom. He was like, well done.
Yeah, I know. And then, of course, like his boot was off because he was in the middle of taking his boot off when he was drinking the beer. So it was just a very like comedic moment. I loved that. But eventually, at the end, Frank is going to start operating on somebody, and so Hawkeye and Trapper have to tell him, you know, we think you might have hepatitis, we stole your blood, and we think that blah, blah, blah. And Frank says, there's no way I have hepatitis. It wouldn't have shown up that fast. You know, the pie probably came in with hepatitis. And they say, no, but to be sure, you shouldn't operate. And Frank goes to operate anyway. He's like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. And if someone tells you might have hepatitis, as a doctor, shouldn't you just like not do that? Shouldn't you not put other people at risk?
It's almost like Frank isn't a very good doctor or something.
Oh, is that a hot take?
Oh, I don't think so. That's all they do.
Yeah, the fact that they say
that he might not have a medical degree sometimes.
Oh, I love it. But yeah, so I thought that was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. And then like Margaret comes in as well, and she's just like, what is going on? I don't understand this. And when they do tell them that they stole Frank's blood, like of course they're like, you did what? But they're not like that angry, like not any more angry about it than any other prank that they pull.
Yeah.
Again, like real world, they should be in prison for stealing your coworker's blood. Like that's an insane thing to do. That's like a violation of the human body under any circumstance to like steal someone's blood while they're sleeping. And they're just like, oh, Hawkeye, what a wacky other thing that you've done to me.
Yeah, I was really like, when I was watching this, I was like, shouldn't this be a bigger deal? I mean, I know it's a sitcom and they can't really make it like a huge deal, but I was like, this seems like a bigger deal than they're making it, but I don't know.
I mean, when in other episodes, they do drug him, they do tie him up, stuff like that.
That's true.
Mean, I guess that isn't much more extreme in context, but it was just like, it still felt like a wild swing that I never quite recovered from, as you can tell from this commentary. Where it's just like, wait, this is an episode about stealing another guy's blood. What the heck?
Yeah, I think that us growing up in, you know, like the 21st century and this show being kind of old, that we just we just kind of respect bodily autonomy more than maybe they did in the 1970s. Yeah.
It's not quite as fun to violate other people's space anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like as just played for laughs anymore, I don't think. So maybe that's why we're kind of harping on this.
Yeah, sorry, Larry Gelbart and everybody. Like, you did a good job, but like, this is a wild one. This is just one of those wild ones that I don't even dislike. I just think it's like crazy. Like,
yeah,
you would
is crazy.
Never try to do this storyline in anything today. Like,
yeah,
ever.
I can't imagine it flying today. Not at all.
Even
just,
like,
yeah,
if Walter did this to somebody in Breaking Bad, it would be like a description of like, look how far he's gone.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely episodes of House out there where House did something similar and then got in like actual trouble.
Yeah.
It was played like, you can't do this, you're a doctor.
And then they're like, well, I guess it's fine because he got results.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of similar to Hawkeye and Trapper, but in a more dramatic way. But anyway, to get off the topic of blood now, it turns out that, of course, Frank doesn't have hepatitis. He was right all along that Pi had come in with hepatitis, and magically it's all better now. This ending really happened quickly.
It was just like, oh, well, you don't have hepatitis. And also, you know, I'm no medical expert, so when they said you have anemia, I was just like, oh, well, I guess it was a mutual good, because even though he didn't have hepatitis, they discovered that he had something else. So maybe they didn't steal his blood in vain, and then they're like, well, you have anemia because you weren't prepared to do a blood transfusion. So it was just like completely pointless. I was like, well, that's the ending, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought that joke right at the end was funny, but I really loved the final scene in this episode where you get Frank and Pi playing checkers together in the swamp. I thought that was so sweet.
That was really good. Like, it is kind of a non-ending just to the main story, but whenever this show does have like a little epilogue, like a little tag at the end, it generally does like a good job of being like, all right, everything is good.
Yeah,
this was a cute, fun ending.
Yeah, and I thought it was sweet too that like Hawkeye and Trapper kind of acknowledged that they stole Frank's blood and that was probably really wrong. And they bring him flowers and they say, you know, do you forgive us and stuff like that. Of course, they make a joke at the end, but I don't know, it just felt very wholesome. Them apologizing to Frank and Frank playing checkers with Pi, and it was sweet. I really liked it.
They literally say like, "Oh, you're so generous, but next time maybe we'll get your permission because of your generosity." Frank was just like, well, I don't know what's going on anymore. That was kind of the look he gave.
I know,
but
it was
otherwise,
funny.
good episode. Like, it is a funny episode.
Yeah, I laughed a lot at this one.
It had a lot of good moments, but it just 2021 brain, 2022 brain. You're like, well, maybe don't steal your friend's blood, but otherwise, good episode.
The one final thing about Pi too is that I just really liked how in the final scene he said hi to Hawkeye and Trapper, and he had, in perfect English, he had no accent, and meanwhile the day before they had to have Hojon translate. I was like, what happened here? But okay, sure.
Because you can learn English very quickly.
Yeah, because English is so easy to learn. But yeah, I thought that was cute.
He was mainlining that Duolingo in bed.
So do you have any favorite lines from this episode?
After they find out like Frank might have hepatitis, they talk to him like, oh, you feeling okay? You doing all right? And Frank is like, well, I did have a weird dream last night. I dreamed that I was a soda pop and they stuck a straw in me and people were drinking me. And like that was a good line. I like that one. It was so silly. The imagery was so silly. I really like that one. Did you have anything that stuck out to you?
Yeah, there were literally so many. I just like, I couldn't note all of them down, but I noted so many down. I really liked in the close to the final scene where they kind of reveal that they took Frank's blood. Henry bursts in when he hears the commotion. And Frank says, I want these two arrested. And Henry goes, you always want these two arrested. I loved that so much. And also when Hojon was translating for Pi, Hawkeye goes, "I wish we had subtitles for this."
Oh my god.
And just that was so funny.
I completely forgot about that one. That one was the best because they don't subtitle the Korean in the show at all, and just Hawkeye going, "I wish we had subtitles," felt so. I love that one.
Genuine. I know.
That was a good line because that felt like a very modern joke.
Yeah. One other thing that I thought was really, really weird was that right before they find out that Frank possibly has hepatitis, Hawkeye is talking to a nurse in the mess tent. I forget her name, but
forgot about this scene too.
It was
okay. This is a wild scene.
Yeah, we're kind of jumping all over the place, but this is honestly so crazy because he's talking to her and he is basically imagining her naked. And I was sitting there like, why is this scene in there? Like, what's the point of this?
This scene is. We should mention this episode is credited to be written by series creator Larry Gelbart, and I think that any time that a show has an episode that's written by the person who created the show, that episode is always a little more like, hey, check me out. I'm writing the episode. I'm a cool dude. I created the show.
Yeah.
This is my vision. And like this one, with the density of the lines and like this insane scene with this nurse, I feel like that was a real, like, I'm Larry Gelbart, I'm gonna do what I want with this show kind of moment. Because Hawkeye is talking to this nurse, who I don't know her name, and she's like, "Oh, are you undressing me with your eyes?" And it, like, cuts to his fantasy vision, where, like, you don't see anything, but shoulders up, you can just tell that she is, like, not wearing any clothes. And, like, that's the only time that so far, like, a fantasy like that has happened in this show, where it was, like, strictly shown from a character's perception or their imagination. So it was, like, it genuinely caught me off guard to have this joke. Not even that she was naked or anything, it was just that, like, it's weird that we're seeing inside Hawkeye's head in this moment.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, something, just this scene just didn't, I don't know, it felt very strange. It's like, yes, I understand that Hawkeye is sex crazed. We don't need to be beat over the head with it, I think, personally, but that's the male gaze for you.
Literally, like, this is literally.
Literally. But I do have some trivia just to start closing out. Pi was played by the actor Byron Chung. He played a character on the show Lost, and he played Sun's dad. I can't pronounce really his last name, but it's so crazy to me because he was an old man, and he's so young in this episode. It's insane.
He's like a teenager almost here.
Yeah.
I need to watch more of Lost. I know people
you know what? Don't do it. Just don't do it.
Lost like it crash and burns, but it seems so interesting for like what is good. I do want to see that.
I would not recommend it, but and I love Lost. But yeah, so he played Sun's father, who was actually like a really bad character, and he was very important. Not like super important, but very important for Sun and Jin's backstory. If anyone has watched Lost, and they know, and Byron Chung is actually Korean, so we got our first. Yeah, we got our first Korean guest star, and that makes me happy.
Woo! All right, that's a good foot to start on for this our return.
Yes, definitely. Hopefully, we'll be getting better now. So, Ethan, do you have any final thoughts?
I did like this one. It was good and funny and dense with jokes, and clearly was a little more out there than the other ones. And maybe watching this, if I was younger or in a different decade, I would not bristle so much at the central plot line of this one. But otherwise, this is by no means a bad episode. I had a good time watching it, and it was a good one to kind of return to, because it clearly gave us a bit to talk about in our return episode.
Yeah, I thought that this was a great episode to return to. And I'm excited to, because I don't remember this next episode. I don't recall what's coming up next. So I'm excited to see what they followed this episode up with, because it was kind of out there. So I'm curious. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. And it's good to be back. It's good to be talking the show with you again, because it's just always a good time. And I hope that everybody listening can tell that we're also having a good time.
This was such a fun episode to talk about too. Yeah. So to wrap up, we'd just like to give thanks to Jacob Furibalco for being our technical consultant, Melissa, my sister, for cover art, and of course, our lovely listeners. Links to music, our social media, and where to contact the show will be in the description. And until next time, don't steal people's blood.
Just don't do it.
Goodbye, farewell, and amen.
Bye.